Hi, my name is Lisa Doy, and I'm based in Chicago. This week for Sunday supper, we are going to be sharing a bit of our Oshogatsu tradition. And where else do you get started cooking than by going to Mitsuwa? So after our shopping trip, we're going to show you how we cook ozoni, and then you'll hear from me and my cousins on what New Year's means to us. Thanks for watching. So we're gonna make ozoni, and we have our New Year's cookbook here, which includes recipes that we use for New Year's, as well as family stories and pictures of New Year's over the years, so you can get a little glimpse of what we're working with. So for ozoni, we're gonna go look at the recipe, page 17. Um, I have never made ozoni in the summertime and not for such a small quantity of people. So we'll see how this goes. And then mitsuwa also was out of some of the items that I would usually get. So we're going to see how working with some of the different items that I was able to find goes. So really the basis of ozoni, we're going to need to make some dashi. So you can hear I have some water going to boil. And then we're going to put in vegetables, kamaboko, and then cook up some mochi to put inside of that. So what I was able to get when I went to Mitsuwa, they didn't have the regular dashi that in the box, but they had these little packets. So it says for one of these packets, you need 5 cups of water. So let's try that out. So we'll try this out. That's about 5 cups. We'll add the dashi in and bring it back to a boil, and then we'll add shoyu and sugar to taste and come back in and season it a little bit more if we need to. So we're going to start with cutting the vegetables. For this, I'm just going to use daikon and bok choy. And the key with the vegetables especially, but all of the pieces that are going to go into the ozoni is bite size. All right, so now I've cut everything. I should say I peeled and then cut the daikon. I cut it about a 1/4 inch thick. And then because the daikon was so wide, I ended up cutting these into quarters. But if it's less, if it's a skinnier part of the daikon, you can just cut it in half. And then with the bok choy, I cut off the ends and then cut it into maybe 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches long pieces. And then discarded, parts of it like the right in the middle of the bok choy. One thing I will add to both of these is that they will cook down a little bit. So as you're cooking them, they will get slightly smaller. But again, you want pieces that are going to be, something that you could easily just pop in your mouth and have a bite-sized piece. So this is my favorite step in the whole ozoni process, which is cutting the kamaboko off the board. I've always found this really fun. You'll just come in under the wooden board, kind of angle the knife towards the board, and then cut it off. And I'm also going to cut off the end, just, I don't know, so I can snack on it. Here, I would cut these into 1/4 inch, maybe a generous 1/4 inch slices. For the part that will go on as a garnish, I like to cut these at an angle so that you get sort of a more decorative cut. And these, because they're so small, we can cut them a little bigger, maybe 3/4 of an inch, almost to an inch. And just keep that angle going so that you get some nice decorative pieces at the end. So then at the end, you'll get pieces that look like this, that are a little bit more interesting to look at while you're eating them. So I've gotten the dashi to a place where I like the way it tastes. And it's been boiling for a little bit. I've had it simmering. Now I'm going to try to bring back the heat up a little bit, and I'm going to put in our vegetables. So I'm going to start by putting in the daikon, because that's going to be the what's going to have to cook the longest. So I'll just drop some in, and we're going to cook this really until it becomes sort of a translucent. You're going to really see a change in color. I'll put a little bit more. And then we have our bok choy. So I'm going to try to get the stemmier parts of the bok choy first because that'll have to cook a little bit longer than the leafier parts. So we'll put that in. We'll let it cook for a little bit, and then we'll come back and check on how it's doing. Let the daikon, bok choy, and kamaboko cook down for a while at a pretty low simmer. And you'll see that like the daikon has really changed color. It's much more translucent than it was originally. And same with, all the pieces in here. And then at the same time, we're also going to get ready to try cooking our mochi. So I did a test, which is why the water is kind of starchy. I looked in Mitsuwa and then in another Japanese grocery store, and just they did not have regular mochi. So we're working with what we got, which are these that are, I think, more designed to be grilled. But I did a tester and it works. So this is just what we have in the non-New Year's season time. So I'm just going to break this one in half and drop it in. As you're cooking more of these, like if you're cooking this over the course of the day at a New Year's party, when the water gets too starchy, you'll probably want to go in and replace it. But we just did one, so I think we're going to be okay. And these cook up actually pretty well. So if you're in a pinch, you can use this other kind of mochi. Okay, so one of the ways that I look for if the mochi is ready is when you pick a piece up, how it droops off the hashi. And if it's got a really good droop like that, then you know that it's ready to serve. So we'll sort of show you how I like to serve ozoni. I'm going to come in and put just a little bit of dashi at the bottom of the bowl. And then come get my mochi out of this pan. So we'll get it in. And you want it, again, to be droopy, but it's not disintegrating. You've overcooked it if it's disintegrating. And then we'll come back, and this time we'll come in and not get as much broth, but really try to get in all the vegetables, and then come back and try to get some kamaboko that's stuck, and a little bit more dashi to top it off. And then we've also got our decorative other kamaboko to serve. You might want to add chashu on top of this or other things for a little bit more garnish or flavor, but we're not getting that fancy today. And that's it.
So thanks so much, everyone, for taking some time to talk about this. Maybe by way of an icebreaker, it would be nice to sort of hear everyone introduce yourselves and talk about how you first got connected to the to our New Year's. Like, what year did you first go? And maybe an early memory or a favorite memory. Kenji, you want to start since you went first by virtue of birth?
That's true. So my name is Kenji Morimoto. I guess like most of you all in this chat right now, we very much grew up going to New Year's for as long as we remember. Definitely based on all the photos that there are of us as children, kind of, the yearly photos taken on Ma's couch, to all the memories of kind of crawling on the ground at Ma and Ji-chan's old house. So I think very much is a part of our childhood. So I don't know, I can't really ever imagine family without New Year's being an integral part of it, both in terms of just like the ritual of it, and just something that I think, especially now as we're all getting older and like living in different places, something that I think I very much took for granted as a kid, just, how important it was, how much of a big family event it was. And I think I'm only really realizing this as I'm getting older and further away from the people I love and where my community is. So I'd say a lot of my favorite memories of New Year's very much have to do with kind of the ritual of the day before and the day of, but particularly I think of just kind of the craziness and chaos when we were all cooking in Ma and Ji-chan's old kitchen, sometimes going up to Auntie Fumi's to kind of get away from the crowds, sit on her couch and watch movies. But I think that was So my favorite memories, I think they really stuck with me, and clearly, we all got along really well when we were kids. Obviously, as we got older, we drifted, but I think it's really nice that New Year's has been something that's again brought us back to where we kind of came from. Yeah, that was my little monologue.
Thanks. And maybe to more explicitly articulate this, because the people who are going to watch this don't come to our New Year's, but this for like up until maybe 2010, the cooking and the New Year's Day party itself happened at Kenji's grandparents' apartment in Chicago, and has moved now to Kenji's parents' house in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
So technically, Josh, Joseph, and I all had the same first New Year's, which was 1992. Anyone want to talk about? Any one of the two of you want to talk about your New Year's memories? How you're connected into the New Year's lengthy family tree, etc.
Sure. My mom is cousins with Kenji's mom, and Kenji's grandmother and my grandmother are sisters. They lived in the same building for the last 60 years. They still live together, and I think their relationship and like their strong bond has really made our family, our larger family, have a very strong bond. And I think that like this group kind of shows that we come together because of New Year's. And I guess 91 was my first New Year's, but I didn't really come into cooking until later. I think that my mom and my grandma kind of cook on the outside of Auntie Aya and Morito's side of cooking. So I came in a little bit later in my life, but I think when I did, I bypassed some of the lower jobs, the menial tasks, and I went right into the kitchen and started frying up, which was in Japanese tradition. You start working low and then keep working and working. And I kind of bypassed that. Ruffled some feathers maybe on the way in.
We can discuss that.
Yeah.
Joseph, do you want to talk about your New Year's experiences?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I have been attending this Oshogatsu party for my entire life. Every New Year's Day, huge celebration, lots of food, lots of family, and it's been great. I am at this party because my father, who grew up in Hawaii, was roommates with John, who is Kenji's mom's brother. And so my dad, it was just too far away to go back to Hawaii for holidays. And so I think after the freshman, I'm not sure when my dad stopped coming home to Hawaii for things, but he continues to live in Chicago to this day. And so I'm so grateful that like my family, my parents, my brother and I have been like absorbed into this incredible tradition. I also started cooking a little bit later on in life. I think I was in high school when I started coming to the whole cooking and preparation time. And I do remember that I was invited to relieve John from chicken frying at one point. And Lisa, you and Kenji had a lot of feelings about the order that jobs should happen in. And so I was quickly pulled away from frying the chicken and given a carrot to cut for about an hour and a half, which was pretty incredible. I didn't know that I could spend so much time cutting one carrot. I have a lot of thoughts about that carrot. I was like chopping it. I was told to matchstick the carrot, and so I was out there just chopping, and I thought I was gonna be done in like 10 minutes, and then I was told that we like the carrots to be approximately 1.25 inches long. approximately an inch and a quarter long. And then Lisa, your mom pulled a ruler out of her pocket and was like, here, this is for you to approximate an inch and a quarter. So it was, that's a memory that I have so many memories of this, and it's a really, really cherished event. And I look forward to being there every New Year's for forever and ever and ever. So great.
Yeah, so in sort of this Frankenstein's monster of a family, I think one of the things that I like is the parallel between Joseph's dad being John's college roommate and Lucy being my college roommate. So Lucy, do you want to talk about your first New Year's?
Yes. I think I'm the newbie in this squad, truly a newbie in that my first New Year's was 2016. So 2016 going to 2017. And until then, I'd only heard about the mystical New Year's and like the legendary New Year's being Lisa's freshman year roommate in college. And I think I met Joe and Kenji virtually on one of the like virtual Google Hangouts that we did back in our college dorm. But I heard, I don't know, it just sounded so nice, and how it was a family gathering and a tradition that at that point was like clearly very religious, or it was just like a ritual that was held in such high regard by Lisa, and I hold Lisa in high regard. So I was very honored to participate in it in my first New Year's in 2016. And I've come every year since. It's kind of like this adopted cousin that doesn't actually identify as Japanese American, because I'm Chinese American, but I think something that Lisa will probably like bring up as a discussion point later on. I think what I'm really grateful for in being exposed and kind of absorbed into this wonderful, loving tradition is also I've kind of had my own journey and been inspired to get in touch with my own Asian Americanness in a way that really wouldn't have happened if I hadn't come into the circle. So that being said, logistically, everyone was pretty grown by the time 2016 came around. So I think I'd heard about the hierarchy, but there was the prep room and kind of the cooking room. I understood it. Lisa prepped me mentally to like understand the processes. I myself don't cook, so I kind of just honored to take part in whatever tasks get thrown my way. Yeah, and I think I'm just really grateful to be a part of this circle.
Thanks. So I'll quickly introduce myself. My name's Lisa. I am also sort of an absorbed cousin whose mom was friends with Kenji's mom in graduate school, I think, and my mom got invited, and then I got invited, and started cooking. I was trying to think, Kenji, when I started cooking, like it was definitely elementary school, but old enough that we could use big knives on vegetables.
Yeah.
So maybe like 10, 8.
I want to say maybe you were like 7, 8, because I'm 2 years older, right? So probably around that.
And I think my early memories, so from like the time I was maybe 8 till 18, it was me and Kenji in the dining room cutting vegetables for like 12 hours.
It literally felt like hours.
I mean, I think it was the only task we had. It took us the whole day. It took us the whole day to cut and peel all the vegetables. And I think one of the nice things now is like when we have so many people doing it, that task, plus we're also not 8 and 10 years old, like we're slightly faster. So that task, just, you can see like lots of hands make light work. But I think especially we used to sit in that room and listen to musicals and sing along and cut vegetables. So, I think Lucy started bringing up this subject of ethnic identity, and in the invitation for doing this segment, the ask was sort of about like a food tradition that makes you feel Japanese American. And I immediately jumped to New Year's because I think it's something that is so integral in my Japanese American identity. So I would be interested in hearing from the other people on this call, like, how do you see New Year's relating to your Asian American or Japanese American ethnic identity, and maybe as that identity has grown over time, has it changed sort of the way and relationship you have with New Year's?
There are so many different foods that I like really appreciate at Oshogatsu, and I think that a lot of those foods are things that I appreciated a lot more after I had helped cook them. So by participating in not only like attending New Year's, but the ritual of cooking and preparing for New Year's, I like these foods mean so much more to me that like would I like the foods that I cook for myself are impacted by the foods that we cook together as a team, because like there are similar I don't know, I just cook whatever I want, and sometimes that ends up, it's never gobo, but it's occasionally some other things that we do eat together. And I think that this is important because since my dad is so I'm multiracial, and my dad is Chinese and Japanese and from Hawaii. And because of that, there's a lot of degrees of separation from other members of my family and other like cultural and community practices. I think that being a part of this Oshogatsu celebration has given me just like it's like a tangible anchor into culture and community with you folks that anchors my experience as a Japanese American, and makes that it just has a very solid foundation, where although I am Chinese American and I identify as a Chinese American as well, it's less concise than that. Like we don't celebrate Chinese holidays with Chinese traditions. And then with my mom's side of the family, it's also, we also don't have a super strong food tradition from that side. So, yeah, great. Did I answer it? I feel like I kind of answered it.
Yeah, I think this notion of sort of this to me is a tethering moment. Like New Year's is one of maybe the 3 or 4 moments where I would point to in a year where I'd say this affirms me feeling Japanese American. I think that that's something I really resonated with in your response.
Joe, you mentioned gobo, and I think it's funny because it was immediately what I thought of when I was thinking of a food that connected me, because of exactly what you said in the preparation that goes into it, and then the day of, and like having so many family members and like people, extended family members and friends and like of other people's family, and then having them there, seeing this food and like feeling like I prepared this, like we prepared this for everybody else, you know, like that connection that we share. And Lisa, earlier you mentioned like how Kenji and you would cut all day till you were 18, and I think it's important to mention like that Joe, you and Ken, we all grew up together, but that Oshogatsu, like as a tethering moment for this group of people, was happened later in life, like you said, like after we were 18. And for me, I think leaving Chicago area, like for college, and then coming back is like what made it so tethering, is because I would come back less and I was home for less time. This time that I spent with family was more important, and New Year's is one of those like very important moments in our year that we come together. And so I think gobo like that, when not like in that nature of like coming back and like having this moment that brings us together, and that food that we prepare for other people. When I was gone in Brussels and I couldn't come home for New Year's, gobo was one of the like few things that I could find for Oshogatsu when I was there and make and share with other people. And so when I think of food that tethers me to the Japanese identity, I think of gobo, I think of this Oshogatsu, I think of this group of people.
I have so many thoughts on that. But I just wanted to know, who did you trick into shaving the gobo for you? Did you do it? Did you do all the prep?
Did it.
You got it. Nice. Minions for the
Normally
future.
we have you do that, but
I know. Oh my goodness.
I would be
I
interested.
don't even think
you
I
know,
ate the gobo until I made the gobo, and now I'm like, guys, if you are coming to this, I'm gonna make you eat this gobo. I like push the gobo and the chirae at people so hard because those are the ones that I hate making the most.
So I'm
I
going to
have-
point
Great.
for Joseph, Josh, and myself. I'm going to point to participating in JSL Chicago's Kancha project as sort of like another moment of like building Japanese American ethnic identity. But I guess Kenji, I would be interested to hear a little bit more about like how New Year's has sort of related to your ethnic identity development, or whatever
Sure.
else you were going to say.
Yeah. There are a few things that I thought of when you guys are talking about. The first thing is that on gobo. So I think like why do we care so much about like the ritual that's put into it, like all these like silly steps that might not look like anything, but then like when you look at the final product, you don't realize all the stuff that's going into it. Some of what you guys have been saying, and I think like I don't know about you, for those who identify as Japanese American, but for me, I feel like I didn't really grow up with much ritual attached to my identity that wasn't food related. Like obviously for some of us in this group chat, we went to temple every week, and obviously that was incredibly Japanese American. We saw our cousins, we did Japanese American things, we heard the language. But beyond that, if you really think about, for example, temple, what were the rituals that really, I guess, reminded us, like in terms of a sensory reminder? It was all food related, right? Like udon at temple, like the weird vegetarian days at temple, the chicken teriyaki at Ginza. So I think similar, like if I look at, like when I look at our Oshogatsu, which I think is also important to note, is fairly unique, and especially in North America. Like if you speak to most other Japanese Americans, even Japanese in Japan, their Oshogatsu New Year celebration isn't really like what we do, both in terms of like amount of food that's made, and obviously our menu has evolved tremendously to show the diversity of our family community, to like be a bit more modern, to get rid of things that we don't care for. But I think there's something really to be said about kind of that ritual associated with food, and the fact that what we do is so different. It's like for me, I didn't like, again, I grew up Japanese American Chicago. By blood and by name, I look very Japanese. So when I went to university, and that was the first time I really met a lot of other Asian Americans and some other Japanese Americans, that's when I really realized how unique our family experience and our community is. I'm not sure how it is for just in Hawaii, or for people who are multiracial and kind of their experience with that. But I found that to be really special and really humbling, because I had never really realized how unique our experience was. The fact that we actually make everything, and we make such variety, and we take such pride in it. Whereas with so many other Japanese American families, I think especially in Chicago, they might make a smaller portion, or not put as much, I don't want to say time and effort, because I think that like judgment can be kind of implied there. But I think for whatever reason, we've decided to really, really invest a lot of time and money into it. And I think, I don't know, like I'm really curious to see like how New Year's evolves with our family now that we're not all in Chicago. Once the second generation, the Yonsei are gone, how that might impact things. But it's cool to see that we've again put so much effort into food as a reminder of our ethnic identity, which I never really again thought of until I got much older and realized how unique it was to us.
Yeah, I remember there was a year where you had Japanese exchange students come, and they were staying with your family over New Year's, and they sort of had comments about like, to them this would be food you'd buy at a grocery store, and so they'd never had the experience of cooking it. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, how do you preserve tradition when it can't change and adapt in the same way that sometimes culture does and can. I think to me, in a lot of ways, New Year's is an example of how my experience of being Japanese American is this experience that was brought to the US at a very particular time and has sort of evolved apart from Japan for so long. So then when you get people who are like immediately coming from Japan, it looks very different from how their culture has evolved in that same period of time.
Yeah.
Lucy, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think the common thread that everyone has brought up, which is also just core to New Year's, are these not so silly steps and the rituals. Because I think something that really resonated with me, or just like struck me after the first New Year's, was realizing that like each food realizing exactly how you had contributed to it in a way that I thought was really nice. Because as Chinese American growing up in a Chinese household, of course, like the Asian thread is that a lot of our lives, a lot of our family was brought together around food as well, but in a way that really, like, the older generation, the aunts, the uncles, the parents were making it, and it was this beautiful feast, but there was no real like intention in the way that I saw at New Year's. And I think it's just, I don't know, it's really nice. And the one food I would say, going back to your original question, of that I connect with as an Asian American, are dumplings. And so seeing, I think, Joe, you introduced the wontons, or I don't know when you introduced them, but they were there in 2016. And I thought that was just kind of like it felt like a nice bridge between the two subcultures. And something else that you mentioned, Lisa, about preserving these traditions, it feels like these rituals, these steps that seem minute, are just like a really tangible, tactile way to pass things down generationally, when the more abstract things like culture, what does culture mean, what does it evolve as the generations grow, might be a little bit too high level. But kind of having these steps that you just literally pass down from generation to generation in the form of a cookbook, and in the form of a cookbook for 4 generations now, which is also incredible, I think is really powerful.
So I think one of the other pieces that has started to come up a little bit is, I guess, just to name explicitly, like, none of us are first cousins by blood, but I think we have formed this very nice family. And, I think Kenji and Josh have alluded to it. Like, I think that there was a period of time where, and Josh, Joe, Kenji, and I grew up together, and have known each other our whole lives, but there was sort of a period of like high school into college, where we sort of drifted apart. But I would point to this one New Year's where, for the first time, we decided to hang out like for New Year's midnight, like New Year's Eve. I don't know how to better explain it, but like we would always cook the day before, and then kind of everyone would go home, and no one would actually like watch the ball drop or sort of like do the like midnight thing together. And we're in Chicago, so we went over to Joseph's family's house and got snowed in. There was a blizzard that came through. Frankly, maybe we shouldn't have even driven to your family's house to begin with. It was not the safest drive, but we got stuck there. And I think it was sort of this like turning point or crystallization of sort of us as a unit, as sort of like adult people coming back together from like growing up together. And I would just be interested in sort of hearing from other people. Like, we've never really talked about it so much, but like, how do you see New Year's sort of in fostering or facilitating our relationships with each other?
I think tremendously. Like, again, I think you very much identified the moment where it shifted. Like, I think many of us may have, like, individually between one-on-one in this group, had good relationships or stronger than others, but I think that night was really what changed it. What was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought. This was about sorry, what was your question?
I guess I just would be interested in hearing, like, I think there's like several threads coming together around ethnicity, around family, and then around like sharing traditions with each other. And so a very open-ended question, just asking for other people to reflect on that.
So I think what I think of, I think it's right that you nailed it on the head. Like, that is the moment we came together as a core group. But I think from there, we've seen new traditions in our group as cousins And I think soba is like the best example of that. Like Lisa bringing in the tradition of having soba noodles right at New Year's, and like how that's like another food element, but that it brings us together, and it's a new tradition that we all share and that has grown with this group. Kind of shows how like we as a group have grown, but like still incorporated traditions of that New Year's and food. That's what I think.
I remembered my train of thought. So again, I know we've been talking a lot about like being Japanese American and then identity, and I think for me, before I knew that you guys were like a peer community to me, so meaning like until that moment, I felt like I didn't really have much of a peer Japanese American community because I didn't grow up in the suburbs that I think many of us grew up in. It was predominantly not Asian. You're very much the minority. And again, I brought up Temple before, but obviously many of those people you didn't really see outside of that Sunday period. So I think for me, and again, I didn't really have any Japanese American friends at all. So I think it was really that moment that I was like, wow, I know all these people who are my age have similar experiences to me in terms of what they're doing with themselves now that I view as peers, but we have so much common history. And I think that's something that I never really felt. Whereas obviously if you're, of one ethnic identity and in your entire community and your world's like that, I think, it's obviously much more seamless. But for me, I never really felt that until I identified that within you all, which is really nice because I think, I never really, as a kid, I don't think I would have thought that would have happened that way. Just given that our friendships have kind of, not always been as close as they are probably now, which I think is really special.
I wanted to say that it was, I think, safe for us to drive to my house. I think that the trip that we made where we fishtailed in the parking lot as we bought more champagne was probably like where this feeling of danger came from, but that was an unnecessary excursion. We were safe inside of my house, I think. So that was yeah, that I hadn't thought about that memory in a was that was pretty incredible. I wanted to say that I think New Year's is obviously special for a lot of different reasons. One of them is that like we spent, like growing up, we celebrated, there was always a family birthday party for all of us. We celebrated like Mother's Day at your house, Lisa. We had like a rotating schedule of holidays that would be like Mother's Day, Father's Day, barbecues, like all kinds of stuff that would happen throughout the year. But this is the one that I think we don't have like Mother's Day recipes that we share with each other, and so that I think is like one core difference about Oshogatsu from all these other holidays is that there are foods that we eat because it's Oshogatsu and we take the time to cook them together. I think it also helps, part of the reason why I think this holiday is the one that has kept us together as opposed to like Ginza or Obon, is that because especially after we've like scattered for college, just the way that like our families work in Chicago and the way that school schedules work and things like that, we would always be back in Chicago and all be in the same place. And I think for myself, as I grew older and went to college and then was working funky jobs afterwards for a little while, and since then I've moved and now I live with my family in Honolulu. But like being home in Chicago for
Oshogatsu is something that is, again, it's foundational, it's an anchor, it's something that I'm expecting to do for as long as I'm able to do it. And so I think that that's the consistency that a lot of other holidays don't have. And so I think that's one thing that brings us all together. Also, we get a lot of time to just talk to each other while we're chopping vegetables. It's like when we're doing other things, sometimes we're focused on what it is that we're doing. But if you just have, an entire trash bag full of daikon that you need to cut into something that's going to shrink down to be bite-sized for the grandmas, like, we have practice doing that, and we can do that. And when we're doing that, there's not other things that we need to be doing. So it's just being there chopping together is enough, and it gives us a platform to talk about whatever else is going on in our lives. So
I feel like that was very Buddhist, like being very present in the moment and like focusing on the actions that we're doing, but also kind of the relation that's being built.
I think a couple important things were mentioned though. One, like that it was the first time we chose to come together and like spend time together. I think that was really important. And two, the champagne.
yeah.
Want to clarify? I think we purchased champagne on the way to your house and then didn't leave your house once we got there. I want to make it clear that in my memory of it, we were not drinking and driving.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
We're definitely not drinking and driving. That's
Remember I often drive past that liquor store on the way to the airport, and I think about that New Year's.
Do you guys remember that we had that ancient champagne from Uncle Mako?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh had when you guys were cleaning out his house. Yeah, lesson
And it
don't
was-
drink champagne from the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess to close out the recorded portion, I would just be interested in hearing everyone's favorite food. Like, actually, what's your favorite New Year's dish?
To eat. Can we do this in multiple rounds? Can we have one to eat, one to our favorite to cook, and then our favorite to
We're like an honorable
later?
one.
Sure. And also, if you want to throw in like what you would cut immediately, you're welcome to do that.
Oh, I have a right.
This is too hard.
Really putting us on the spot, Lise.
Well, I would say for me, and this I wouldn't say this is my favorite food because I actually I don't love it, but for me, like the food, I'm sure there's an answer for a lot of you guys, is Ozoni. I think for me, like that's the food that means New Year's, or that period of time, because growing up at my house, we'd always have so much leftover Ozoni too. So just the period of like, from the next week or so, continue to get that. But I think for me also Ozoni is special because my grandfather, who also was very, very much, it was him and my grandmother who housed and hosted New Year's for many, many years. That was his favorite food. And in the very last months of his life, that was like one of the one things that we could always trick him into eating a lot of to get his health up. So I think for me, Ozoni is very much, that means family without being too corny, but also I think that for me is the most special food, even though, I might only have one bowl of it, but I think when I have that, it's like New Year's, it's a good New Year's. It's a very symbolic food for that reason.
That was a good one, Kenji.
I know, sorry.
Started strong.
I've been, can I do an honorable mention?
Yeah.
Well, I think the honorable mention for me is Oshizushi. So for listeners and for those who might not be aware, essentially in our family, so Oshizushi means like push sushi. So there are these like very old, not well made, falling apart wooden like sushi presses. And growing up, that was always one of the last things we did. When it was just Lisa and I making it, we hated it because our fingers were stinging from all the vinegar. We were tired. We've been, in a kitchen cutting vegetables for the entire day. But yet, again, for me, similar to how like Ozoni, when you drink that on New Year's Day, means okay, it's a good New Year's. For me, I feel like New Year's cooking isn't over until the oshizushi is done. So that's another reason why. And I think it's like it is a silly item. It doesn't always get eaten, but something also for new visitors and guests. That'll be the first item that we always kind of give to them to do because no one else likes to do it. So I think that for me is another very integral New Year's dish, something that I probably won't want to continue in my future New Year's, but I think it does it's meant a lot for, I think, our generation, as well as kind of the role it plays for new guests to become a part of the New Year's cooking celebration.
I think in the last couple of years, we've tricked some of the youth into doing it, which has been, I think, really powerful, both to mirror what you guys went through, and I skipped because I didn't start until the point in high school. But we just tell them putting on the ginger and the egg and stuff, that they're being artistic, and then we celebrate and we clap for them a lot, and then they're like, am I done yet? And you're like, no, we have to we have to do more. And then it comes together, and it's really, I think that's fun because that's an easy one with no knives that we can share with some of the youngest people who are helping to cook. So I was actually also going to mention the oshizushi, as it's definitely not my favorite to eat, and it's definitely not my favorite to make, but I am glad that it's there as something, as like an intro for those people. Yeah.
As someone who has made those alongside the quote unquote youth for every single year since 2016, yes, I upvote that as well. I think it's it's a nice, just like the blacks have meaning. It actually does take some care. I think every single year mine turn out the most open-ended, shall we say?
Artistic, yes.
Artistic. There's a
You
lot
can
of
tell on the table which ones are yours, Lucy, and that's either a good thing or a bad thing. But
I mean, on the table, off the table, all of it. And then I think since I'm still getting acquainted with kind of the dishes, because it's only been a couple of years, I like the fried chicken a lot, but I don't know if that's like cliche to say. I think it's
which one?
It's very advanced based on, in terms of the prep, like it's very high ranking on the prep scale. So it sounds like it deserves a shout out, and also it's just delicious. So I like it.
I would say favorite food is just the leftovers in general. Having weeks of leftovers is the best. I look forward to the leftovers, and Kenji's family just sending me home with bags full and Tupperware. And my honorable mention would go to Emmy's Cookies, although they are not traditionally Japanese. They are a show of Kenji's family, like the time and effort that they put into this celebration and how much it means to like everyone else. Emmy spends like weeks in preparation, making like hundreds of perfectly like bite-sized cookies, and they're machine operated, like they're perfect. They're quite a favorite.
On that thread, I also want to honorable mention John's wines. I think that they're curated, they're delicious. They carry us to prep and the New Year's Day. Beautiful.
I'm also going to shout out Ozoni. I think that that's like the number one New Year's food. For part of this, I also had to film a cooking video, and I opted to cook Ozoni as the like sample dish. And I don't think I realized how sentimental it was. Like, it's so unique. There's no other time of year when I would eat it. And so it was like kind of out of place, but also very reassuring to eat it in the middle of July. And then I think my honorable mention goes to the Chinese food we get for dinner on New Year's Eve night. We always get, I think of like this sort of like China mushy, like very JA, not too spicy, ordering of Chinese food that I think is also like a very Japanese American experience, and honestly it's one of my favorite parts. And then we take it with us now as we go have our like into the New Year's Eve night party, and it's great to eat at 11:30 and again at 1:30. And I just got to shout out the Chinese food.
It's very fun deciding which of the Chinese foods fit inside of the toshikoshi soba. It's like, can we put Sichuan green beans in the toshikoshi soba? No. Can we put the shredded chicken from the chicken low-men, like, yeah, we can put that in, you know, and so that's very helpful. Yeah.
Any last thoughts, comments, etc.?
I think it's just amazing that like Ma and Ji-chan and Auntie and Uncle Aki and that generation decided to stick with it. Like it sounds really silly, but again, like I just did not realize how unique it was that they did so much. Whereas like most other families, even think about all the other families at Temple, they don't really do as much as we do. And it's so special, and the fact that like they did it without obviously much money, and in a very small house, and were able to host so many people and to be such a massive memory for so many people. Not just our immediate families, but like again, as I forgot to mention, but someone's random colleague who might be in Chicago over the holidays, someone's just like random people, and the fact that they feel so welcome by the tradition that was started by a generation and people that didn't have to do that, but for whatever reason they really stuck with it. So I think that's something that we don't celebrate enough. That obviously we've been taught and educated and instilled in this way of doing something that's so special, but it could have easily not gone this way. So I think that's really incredible that they did that.
I'm just grateful that it brought us all together, that we have it as a tradition. It is really special, and I think regardless of like how different it might be from other JAs, I think it's really important that we have it and that it brings us together and that we like created a family out of it and like come together as a family out of it. It's all pretty cool.
I also am just really inspired by the community. I think we talked a lot about what happens inside the prep, inside the quote unquote family, blood or adopted, and just seeing just the community that comes on New Year's Day is something. I think I echoed this as well in the Ginza piece that your mom put together, Josh. Just being able to share the culture through the connectivity of like love and celebrating bringing in the new year, I think it's really inspiring.
I think if I had anything to add, I would just say that I think that Oshogatsu has, like, although Oshogatsu is both our 2-day celebration of cooking and then like huge feast, like huge day-long feast, I think it has impacted me and like very much outside of those 2 days, and like obviously because we all stay in connection, and but just like with foods, with like just having Japanese words like in my mouth, I'm like a lot more comfortable coming from a place where I could say, I was like learning to say all the foods as like a younger person. I think that it's changed the foods that I choose to feed myself, and it's impacted like what my definition of comfort food is. Yeah, I'm so grateful for all of you and all of the people that bring the food together for us to cook, and Kenji, to your family for giving us the place to celebrate. So